Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fresh Talk. We're recording live.
We are recording live.
And for the first time, we actually got it out a couple hours prior to a few minutes.
I remembered for once.
Technology is moving fast.
It's amazing.
So I'm going to look at the camera. It'll be the last time that I attempt to look at the camera. But if anybody is out there, I don't know yet. I'm going to wave.
Hello.
Say hello. It's a little delayed.
It's definitely delayed. It's always delayed.
It's delayed. So cool. Great. If anything horrible happens, we can smash your computer before the feds get here.
Shut it down.
So Dan, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Another Fresh Talk. We are here in the barrage.
The barrage.
Your parents' lovely basement. And do they accessorize for a basement?
Amazing how much it looks like my house. But
Yeah.
no, it's not, as you would think. It's
Yes.
my parents' basement garage.
Hell, you may even see Miss Clark come by with the laundry. You just don't know what's going to happen when you
Not
watch
my
live.
ladies.
That's the stuff you get that you don't get when you listen to
Yeah.
it in regular time.
When you're watching live.
Cool. Well, like I said, people are just falling out. we promise people, like, was people in the barrage, we don't even know who they are. They just come by.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
You're
Wow.
you're watching it.
I'm watching it,
you're
but that's how delayed it is.
You're spaceballsing right now.
I just spaceballs, but
That is
that's
a really interesting tease to our later topic.
yes.
You'll
Very good.
see.
Yeah, cool. Yes, balls. Exactly. I didn't bring
The
it up.
topic is
Dan
balls.
did. Tonight's topic, balls. On a very special Fresh Talk, balls. Well, Dan, how you doing? What's going on? What's the latest?
I'm well. I had a very busy weekend last weekend. So my mom retired last month. Went on vacation.
Congratulations, Mrs. Clark.
She's talking to you. She retired, had a birthday, and then went on vacation. So she came back. We had a big retirement party for her.
Cool.
But the night before, we went to a concert. I went and saw Trombone Shorty at the Granada.
With the family?
Yeah, with the fam.
Yeah, because your parents are enthusiasts of the swingy-esque genre,
Yeah.
jazzy horns. They're down.
Yeah, I mean, of late, my dad's gotten, I think, more in touch with his Kentucky roots and listening to the really shitty country that's on whatever station plays shitty country, which is most of them.
Man, your old man in his phases,
I
like
know,
he's.
man.
I love him, and I love that when he gets into something, there's no stopping him.
He's drinking whiskey.
Yeah,
He's riding Harleys. He bought a gun,
wow.
and he's listening to country.
And this is the same guy that when I met him, dear listeners, Dan's dad was a hardcore windsurfer.
Yep.
And swing dancer. So in the course of me knowing your father, which is obviously like 20 years, but he went from windsurfing and swing dancing to shooting guns and listening to country music.
Yes, and riding Harleys.
Yeah. And who could forget the period where he got hardcore into Lord of the Rings and would watch it like every day.
That was one of his better ones, I think. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
finally, he's into something a little cultured.
I remember stopping by your house one time. He's watching Rings. He's like, honestly, Chris, I just can't watch anything else anymore. I just want to watch these Rings movies.
I feel you, Dad.
Understood.
So I did that.
Great.
Saturday was the retirement party.
Okay.
Went swimming at my friend's house on Sunday because it was balls fucking hot here. And
yeah, Southern California is having a
Oh.
bit of a heat wave.
And it's
for
not-
anybody else, it would be nice weather. But if you live in Southern California, it's unbearably hot.
it is incredibly hot. And today's not so bad, but over the weekend it was really fucking hot.
Okay.
And so I went swimming, and then I went to another concert on Sunday. I saw one of my favorite bands, Rat-a-Tat, which
I saw that they were at the theater. And I
Yeah.
thought, I was like, I wonder if Dan's going because I know you back them.
I was there. It's the second time I've seen them at the theater,
Wow.
and they were fantastic.
Good.
Yeah,
Good,
they have
good,
they have a
good.
great.
Look at you going to a bunch of shows.
I know. I never go to shows, and then in
Yeah.
one weekend too. Boom,
Cool.
boom.
I went to a show this weekend.
I
that
heard.
I'm going to tell you about. I went to see Bowling for Soup.
That's fucking awesome, man.
Bowling for Soup. I don't even know where to start. Quite frankly, we could do a whole podcast on that band and our experiences with them. But anybody that is a regular listener to Fresh Talk or is familiar with our career in Army Freshmen, Bowling for Soup, by all means, was the hands down most important band to us in terms of what they did, the opportunities they brought us, the support that they gave us, the education that we gave us. I learned a lot about performing, honestly, from being around them.
Absolutely.
Been around the world with them. I mean, we've shared stages, if you can believe it, anywhere from Japan to
England.
East Germany with
yes,
those
that's
guys.
true.
So haven't seen them live in a very long time, and they were playing down in Los Angeles at the Roxy, right on Sunset Strip. Cruise down there, went in right before the show started. Kai was already there, raging. Our producer Jay Rustin was down there, got up with those guys, and I got to tell you, Dan, I wish you were there. I know you were seeing Trombone Shorty, but like, they're just so fun. They, to me, still are one of the funnest, and I don't know if that's a word, but you know, one of the funnest bands I think in the world. I mean, they're a good time. Now, I happen to love the music as well.
Yeah.
You know, and man, you want to talk about Flashback City?
Oh my
Kai
God,
and
I
I
can
were
only
sitting at the
imagine.
bar, and we were just, every time a song would start, it would almost trigger a memory. So we were just raging. We had the best time. But it was a great show. They were a lot of fun. It was so good to see him because I haven't seen him in such a long time. And I love that band. I love those guys, and they will always mean something. And one thing that eclipses, I think, the fact that they are good songwriters is how fun they are and how funny they are. And they do a lot of comedy. You know, the show's a lot of stand-up comedy, but you forget how good the songwriting is. And to see them now when they're just, but it was greatest hits, baby. You know what I mean? It was just awesome. Track after track. You knew every single song. To see that set was awesome. I mean, it was just
they play Trucker Hat.
They didn't play Trucker Hat. They didn't play Trucker Hat.
Heartbreak.
There was a couple that, I mean, but see, we go so deep on their catalog though, that it's a little difficult for us. But I mean, like No Surf Colorado, which is one of my favorite Bowling for Soup songs. What's that song where he speaks Spanish on Drunk Enough to Dance? Buy you flowers every day, make every day a holiday. I love that song. I think it's called On and On. I love that song. Out the Window. They didn't play that. They didn't play Bipolar. But I'm naming songs that I love. They didn't play Friends of Mine. They did play so many good songs with that. And that's the picky hardcore Bowling for Soup fan talking. But dude, came out of the gate with Almost. They played Emily.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Girl, the Bad Guys Won, of course. Freaking Two-Seater. You know, Ohio. I mean, it was great. It was a great show. Just,
I believe they played Two-Seater and didn't play Trucker Hat.
Yeah, that's a good call. Trucker Hat.
God, I love that. That's one of my favorites of theirs.
Yeah. Just such good songwriters, man, and great guys. And it was such a joyous night to go to that show. And hey, I'm gonna toot our horn really quick, Dan. I was actually recognized multiple times at the show.
In your home state.
Yes.
Your new home state.
Yes. Totally. And that don't happen in LA. In LA, we're just any old schmuck. But I'm telling you,
very true.
Yeah, you want your ego to feel good. Hang out at the Bowling for Soup show in Los Angeles for a couple minutes.
After touring with them for years.
Yeah, because people just, you know, I mean, just, hey, you're that guy from that band. I'm not willing to say they knew the band, but I got a lot of that guy from that band. So
you're that guy.
Yeah, great time, awesome time, a tremendous show. Anytime you get a chance to see Bowling for Soup, do not miss it. It's an absolute blast. Yeah, great guys, and one of my favorite bands of all time for multiple reasons across the board. You know, but we will do an in-depth sometime.
Sure.
Maybe have one of the guys on. That'd be great. Great to get Jarrett to call in and have a conversation with him.
I'm sure he does a podcast. I'm sure he'd be willing to come on ours.
Yeah. All the stories we could swap. I will save it for another time, but do ask me one day, Dan, especially if we do interview Jarrett, the night we won music trivia on the Mega Touch screen. It's one of my favorite on the road moments when Jarrett and I combined to break the all-time record. The amount of joy when that occurred, you could not control it. I mean, it was like celebration in the streets because we had spent like a whole tour and we just couldn't do it.
Were you like David Bowie?
Yeah.
Dancing in the streets with Mick
it
Jagger, like the two of you?
Yeah, it's all. It was just a joyous night. So great to see those guys. Wonderful. So we've been going to shows. That's what you and I have been doing.
That's what we've been doing. We've been going to shows.
Now I noticed that on our notes, because we do have notes, if you can believe that, dear listener, if you're watching,
we do have a document.
We have a document, and Dan's trying to go tight on the document. But I noticed you have now christened one of the segments that didn't get past me.
I didn't christen it.
You did not christen
Someone else did.
Okay, someone else, a listener, christened it.
Yeah.
So what is the name of this new segment that you will regale us with every week, apparently?
This new segment 2, is called News.
Oh, news. Well, we've always had news. Okay, fine. Well, wait, segment 3 is our new segment. Segment 2, news. What's cracking that would be of interest to me or you, our listeners?
I don't know. There was kind of a relatively high-profile case that's been in process, and it just really, I think this morning as we record this, in fact, I saw the headlines that Happy Birthday is now no longer protected by copyright.
I saw that.
Which is huge.
Now, the Warner Chappell, which owns it, which is a major publishing firm,
company.
You know, they make something like a multi-million
it's
every year.
I read over $2 million per year.
A year.
On licensing Happy fucking birthday.
And
I'm sorry, not happy fucking birthday.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yet the details behind Happy Birthday, it's kind of a little long and convoluted how it came to be and why they own it and how they own it. It was like two sisters that wrote it, or two school teachers.
And the melody was like happy, good morning to you, and they ended up changing it to happy birthday because there were many songs with this melody.
But by all accounts, it's the type of situation that it should be in public domain. Take Me Out to the Baseball Game is public domain, and freaking Jingle Bells is public domain. I don't see how they can get away with Happy Birthday, but it's to the point that at least in the United States, if you go to a restaurant at TGI Fridays or a Chili's, the waitresses and waiters cannot sing you Happy Birthday because it's copywritten, and BMI or ASCAP or whoever can actually charge every time you perform it.
And that's why you don't ever see it on television shows. They would always sing like For He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a wild thought.
It's kind of a big, not a huge deal, but it's kind of a big deal.
Yes.
Like, that's awesome.
Yes, it is awesome. And we had no money for music in our film, as you can imagine. So many wonderful people donated songs. God love and keep all of you. But one tune that we had to have for a comedic purpose was through Warner Chappell. And they charge a pretty penny. And they didn't charge us a pretty penny because the artist went to them and basically got it for next to nothing. Thank God. But
was it Happy Birthday?
It was not Happy Birthday. But when I saw that, I'm thinking like, I want my money back. I want my $1.50, son of a bitch. Ripping the people off. But that's really interesting. They are going to fight it, though, from what I read.
Of course they are. It's $2 million for nothing every year for nothing.
Imagine a decade. That's what, $20
million?
$20 million for nothing. And when you say for nothing, folks, we're
talking
literally for nothing. They hand you a contract or email you a contract, which is word for word the same contract they email everybody. They just change the price.
In fact, so it's even less than nothing, because it's not like they have the song and they like give you the performance. Like, somebody else is actually performing it, so they're even doing the work. So they're actually doing less than nothing and getting paid for it.
Remarkable. Just absolutely remarkable. And imagine how much money it would be if there was an original recording of that everybody wanted. The difference is everybody just does their own version of it, but it's crazy. Anytime you hear that song in a film, like Dan was saying, somebody paid in order for you to see that song in that film.
That's correct.
Fucking Happy Birthday. It's so stupid. So good for them. I'm glad they're sticking it to the man.
I agree. Times are a-changing.
Times are changing.
We can't sing that either. But.
Yeah, totally. In other news, I saw, I'll wait for my raves of the week. But that's our news for the week. So now to this new segment.
Really quickly, I want to give a shout out to Ashton Embry on Twitter, who's watching live.
Oh, nice.
We as you may recall, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, dear listener, he was our first hater. Turned out not to be, but
yes,
he's actually a very nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually met him at
the Curtsy CD release show.
No, at Spencer McKenzie's.
Oh, it's
at that cornhole tournament that we talked about, and he came up and he was like, I'm the first Fresh Talk hater, right? It was really funny. Nice moment. Super nice guy. Awesome. So, yes, thank you for tuning in. Obviously, if you're listening to this later than right now, 7:00 on Wednesday night, you ain't watching it live.
That's true.
Do you know that we knew how the system is installed? You can watch this live. And that's what's occurring right now. So when we reference some of the people that are watching it, we just want you to know that's what's going on. Don't feel like you're listening to it on a Saturday afternoon wondering why the hell you can't call in. Have to be watching it live to do so. Cool. So Dan,
segment 3,
the new segment.
Probably won't be a very long segment.
Let's hope.
Probably won't even be every week. But
that's what she said. That's what she said twice.
Don't even do it every week. Throwing out a little, because I have a tech angle to my professional life, and really in my
you're
personal
a tech
life,
guy.
I enjoy it,
and in my personal life,
as well.
I'm in love with the robot.
Lots of electric. Don't even joke about that. I decided to add a little IT section. So it won't be my pick of the week per se, but if I have something IT related or technical that I think people should know about, we'll just throw it here in Dan's IT corner.
Which
is right over there.
Folks, it's a lonely place. Let's introduce you to the very first ever Dan's IT
If you've ever seen like an old movie with a kid in the corner with a dunce cap on, that's really what Dan's IT corner is.
Okay.
But I wanted, in keeping with what I've done the last few weeks regarding technology stuff and keeping yourself safe and secure online, I found a great site that I thought you guys should know about. And it's put out by the EFF, the Electronics Frontier Foundation, and they do a lot of good work protecting the privacy of people from corporations. And the site is called, the URL is ssd.eth.org. ssd.eff.org, and it's just a great collection of information and tools and utilities about who could potentially be tracking you, what to do about it, what software to use, what software not to use. If this is something that concerns you, it's worth a look. So that's it. ssd.eff.org. They have, overviews, they have tutorials, they have all kinds of good information put out by a good, worthwhile company. Not even a company, it's a nonprofit.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was our first ever Dan's IT Corner. It's a lonely little place in a lonely little world. If you go there, you certainly won't see no girls. Dan's IT Corner. Holla.
What, holla?
Holla is better than Allah, because that sounds like it's Dan's Muslim corner.
No,
Dan's IT Corner. Allah.
Right.
Well, hey, we respect your Muslim beliefs, Dan. So our raves of the week, which is a weekly segment.
It's our picks of the week.
Picks of the week. I think I know what your pick is. I'm not going to say it. Let you say it. But I'm interested because Kai raved about something when I saw Kai at the Bowling for Soup show. And he said if I was on Fresh Talk this week, this would be my pick. What do you got, Dan?
I got one of my, I don't want to say favorite bands, but a band I like a lot. Motion City Soundtrack has a new record out.
Yay. And guess what? That was Kai's call. He's raving about it.
Yeah.
He seems to think it's one of, if not the best Motion City soundtrack. He said top 2 for sure.
Would you
go there?
I'll give it top 2. I haven't quite made it through my second complete listen.
Okay.
But I do really like it. It does harken back to Commit This to Memory and I Am the Movie. Like their older good shit, their poppy punky edginess, and a little bit quirky, and not like, This Dinosaur Life I found really, really boring. Didn't really care too much for it. The next record I was like, I don't even want to give it a listen. I'm bored. And then this record came out and I was like, okay, this is really, really good. Commit This to Memory is one of my favorite records of all time. So I don't know if
that's a classic.
I don't know if it's ever going to eclipse it. I don't know if anything can ever eclipse it, but this record is very, very good, and I highly recommend it.
Kai said he thinks it's their best since Commit This to Memory, which is really cool because Kai was explaining to me because they've been on tour with the Commit This to Memory anniversary tour. I follow them on Twitter, so see all the pictures.
I can't believe how long it's been out. Jeez.
But with that said, he was talking about Motion City Soundtrack and saying that he said they were kind of like on hold or on hiatus or sort of broke up, but they almost got together just to mess around and kind of jam with some riffs. And, think one thing led to another. And he said it ended up being their best record ever, which made me feel good because I'm like, damn, I hope that happens next time we decide to get together.
That's how you write a song about somebody that was, used to be, and never mind.
Yeah. That's true.
Little inside, I know.
Cool, great. Well, that's you can't go wrong with that, folks.
No.
The new Motion City Soundtrack. What's the name of the record?
It is called Panic Stations.
Great. I mentioned these guys, I believe 2 weeks ago. I was so wrong when I talked about the new Front Bottoms record, which I told you was going to be my pick of the week when it comes out. It actually was coming out the following day. Yeah. So I'm not going to double up on it because I already told you about the Front Bottoms. But on the same day Motion City Soundtrack came out, the new Front Bottoms came out back on top. It's sensational. I'm not willing to say I like it as much as their last record because I feel like their last record, Talon of the Hawk, is a modern masterpiece.
Okay.
But it is damn good, dude. There's some great songs on there. I really want you to check it out. How about you check out the Front Bottoms record and I'll check out the Motion City.
Done.
And we'll touch base next week.
Done.
Because I think you'd really like it because there's a little more production. It's a little less of the kind of, not acoustic folk, but it's a little more rock than acoustic. They got a song on there called Summer Shandy that has one of those bridges. I know, did you ever hear Great Bridge?
Boring, but that's probably just the Shandy reference.
Yeah, but like bridges. Bridges are a fickle beast. You know, sometimes you're just like, oh, that is a bad bridge. But every once in a while you hear a bridge that's better than the entire song. Summer Shandy has a bridge that's like, well, that's my favorite bridge of the year. As weird as that sounds. So check it out. But my rave for this week is I saw Black Mass, which is the new Johnny Depp movie about the gangster Whitey Bulger. It's a good gangster movie. It's not an amazing gangster movie. It's not Goodfellas. It's not like an epic gangster film. It's fun. It's worth seeing. I'd go see it in the theater. If you like that type of dramatic movie, go see it. But Johnny Depp, one forgets how good of an actor he is sometimes. And this movie reminded me because he's a great actor, but he gets in a lot of these Tim Burton movies where I feel it's more of like a character.
Pirates. Yeah. He's sort of in that. He's not doing what he really does.
And that Mordecai movie ate shit. That didn't do very well.
Didn't even see that.
I didn't see it either, but got bad reviews. But man, you're looking at him and you're looking at Johnny Depp, even though he's in makeup. but 5 minutes in, you forget it's Johnny Depp and you believe that he's a character, which essentially is the secret to acting and great acting and whatnot. But to see a really good old school Johnny Depp, like, oh yeah, don't forget that he knows how to play a character and act, highly recommended. So I would go see, that's my rave for the week. Again, Black Mass, as a movie, I'd give it a B, not an A. It's missing something, but as a performance, I think it's an A+ performance.
I think, the last performance that I really saw him in something, and I don't see that many Johnny Depp movies per se. He was great in the first Pirates. You're like, what the fuck is this? We didn't know what was happening, but like, I really felt like in Blow, he kind of had that same effect on me where I was like, I forgot I was watching Johnny Depp, and he was so convincing and just really into the role.
Donnie Brasco was like that as well. I'm not a huge Donnie Brasco man, but he was great in it.
I'll give you the same thing that you gave with Black Mass. His performance was excellent. The movie was like a B.
I agree. I feel that same way about Donnie Brasco. And some people think it's brilliant, but there's some people out there that any gangster movie they think is awesome. And you got to kind of put them in perspective. Not everything's The Godfather, I mean, I tend to think, what's the one everybody loves? Say hello to my little friend.
Oh, yeah, Scarface.
Yeah. I don't even think that's a good movie.
I've never even seen it.
I think
top to bottom. I've seen bits and pieces.
It is sacrilege to some people, but it's kind of like this weird 80s exploitation sort of like it's the worst soundtrack ever. It's got a couple cool moments where he acts like a badass, but the story itself is kind of lame. So anyway, again, that is, to some people, that is heavy.
We just won't go into my feelings on The Godfather then.
Oh, you don't like The Godfather?
No, I never said I didn't like it. Having not seen it at the time when that movie came out, having not read the books.
Okay.
I was a little disappointed. I was a little let down.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
I saw it in a different century than it was made. However,
I too saw it very late in the game. I understand where you're coming from, but it's still a bit of a tour de force. I mean, I'm a Marlon Brando man. So powerful. You got Brando and Pacino like bringing the thunder in the same flick.
You got Bobby D.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
I'm not saying it's a terrible movie, but I was a little like, wow, this wedding is still fucking going on. Jesus.
Okay, you're right. That wedding is long at the top. All right, well, those are our raves for the week. I am going with Johnny Depp's performance in Black Mass. You are going with the new Motion City soundtrack.
Panic Stations.
Let's get to the topic this week because we can segue a little bit. We're talking movies. We talk movies a lot. What can we do? I love movies. You love movies. We like movies. But we are going to talk 80s movies.
Restricted to the
80s. I don't want something a year before, a year after. It's got to be sometime in 1980 to 1989.
Okay.
Because I will preface this by saying it was an amazing decade for movies.
I totally agree.
A lot of things got fucked up in the 80s, but movies and for multiple reasons. Number one, budgets got bigger.
Yep.
They became more, the blockbuster came into play. The blockbuster didn't exist, but the term blockbuster, a movie that's making $100 million plus, sort of came into existence, number one. Number two, effects got better. Sci-fi in particular was able to do so much more than they were able to do. And there's a certain extravagance in the 80s and a certain sort of, people were living outside the means. And that applied to Hollywood too, because
were they ever?
There's a lot of bombastic, over-the-top, ridiculous pictures.
Shaggy was around?
Yeah. Action movies were super over-the-top, and it led to some terrible cinema, but it led to some great cinema. So I feel like
cinema
too. Yeah. Cinnamons. In the 70s, it's considered the golden age of cinema. And a lot of people think some of the best movies ever made were in the 70s. I agree with that, but I feel it's other genres that sort of, like the dramas in many ways were amazing in the 70s.
Sure.
But in the 80s, comedy in many ways went to a new level. Action movies went to a new level. I'll say kids movies went to a new level. Like there were a lot of subgenres that really in the 80s were allowed to go places because movies were still pretty fucking serious in the 70s.
I also feel like, and maybe I'm making this up because this is sort of how it is now as well, but I kind of feel like more movies were made because costs were coming down. It wasn't like still extravagantly expensive to make a movie in the 80s, but not as bad as it was in the 60s and the 70s.
That's a bit of a good point too.
And visual and special effects came along.
More movies were getting made.
So it wasn't cheap, but it was less expensive than it used to be. So more of this was happening. It was catching on.
I agree. So it's broad. Okay, and I don't know how we're going to break this down. No, we can't do reviews of these movies. Nobody wants to hear you and I, give the plot to Goonies.
I saw that in the theater.
Doors opening.
Yeah, well,
it's a person.
No, it's a frequent guest of the podcast, Jeff Clark.
Yeah, that's crazy. Look at that. You just never know who's showing up in Dan's parents' garage, man.
Basement garage.
All sorts of We promise you. That's the one thing about viewing.
Another
if you're,
guest.
If you're listening to this live, you don't know what the fuck just happened.
This
if
is
you're
great
watching,
radio, I'll tell you.
Yeah, totally. If you're watching, a man just entered in. So we don't even know who he is at this point. So 80s movies.
Yeah.
So again, we're not here to give a breakdown of what these movies are about, but we're talking about.
Weird that you mentioned the Goonies, though, because yesterday I heard a story on NPR involving Chunk from the Goonies, who's now an entertainment lawyer.
I heard something about
I was
that.
like,
He's an
what?
entertainment
Wow, I
lawyer.
want to hear that story now.
So I think we just need to rattle some
Gotta
off,
get into it.
You know, do you want to start on some categories? Do you want to because I think there's like overreaching the best movies of the 80s.
Yeah.
But then I think there's comedies. I think there's action movies.
Okay.
You know, where do you want to start? You want to start with the genre?
Sure. I'm going to preface this by saying I did no homework, so everything
Okay.
that I'm going to spout off is off the top of my head and
Impressive.
probably wrong.
Okay.
I guess we could start with action.
Let's start with action. 80s is the granddaddy of all action movies, straight up. And it really led to the birth of the action star. In the 70s, there wasn't like action stars. There were big actors. You still had John Wayne floating around for a little bit, right? You still had Steve McQueen.
You had kung fu movies. That was probably the closest to like an action star.
Yeah,
I would
Bruce
guess.
Lee. Maybe Bruce Lee.
Chuck
But he was like
Norris.
a kung fu star. We're talking an action
Yeah,
star.
well, that's
And there were two, and there were only two that were at the top of the mountain, and there were a lot of pretenders, but there was in the 1980s Sylvester Stallone,
of course.
and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they produced some of, to this day, the greatest action
I will
movies
never
of all
forget
time.
the first time I saw Conan the Librarian.
Yeah. So let's talk about their movies really quick
Sure.
to get them off the board. To me, the quintessential 1980s film in terms of the over-top crazy action is
Rambo.
Yeah, there you go. Rambo 2. Now,
Okay.
First Blood came out in 1980. The first Rambo movie came out in 1980, but that's more of a drama in a lot of ways. If you watch that, that holds up as a really good
I
film.
think I've seen it since 1980.
It's so good. Watch the first
Okay.
for First Blood.
Yeah.
Not First Blood Part 2. First Blood.
Second
Stallone actually acts. He's not running around a jungle blowing stuff up. It's where he goes to that small town. He's hunted down by Brian Dennehy. It's so good. The speech that, if you were to call my cell phone, the speech that the Colonel gives Brian Dennehy about Rambo is my voicemail. And I know that's kind of like, I don't know, high school to like have a recorded movie quote on your phone.
Should we call that right now?
But it's so good, dude. It's the whole speech. He's like, I don't think you know who you're dealing with. He's an expert in weapons. Like that speech has been ripped off so many times,
Yeah, and Indiana Jones Part 3.
Exactly. Like in Vietnam, he did things that would make a billy goat puke. He knows how to kill and only kill. It's like such a good speech. But that's not the definitive action movie of the 1980s.
No.
It's what you said, Rambo, which is the First
I
Blood
just said Rambo.
Part 2, Rambo, and that's the one where he goes back to fucking Nam, fixes what went wrong in the 70s, gets those PO dubs. I mean, it's the most 80s movie. One man taking on the entire Viet Cong. I mean, that's sort of the American over the top 80s.
I'm not sure you could make a claim that it's any more 80s per se than like Cobra.
Well, I don't know about that though.
But
I mean,
all the quintessential
It's the most
tropes from
Reagan
the
movie.
80s.
Like Reagan quoted Rambo is like, just like Rambo said, we're not leaving anyone behind. I mean, that's crazy when the president of the United States quotes an action movie.
Oh, you mean when an actor quotes another actor?
Well, that's a good point. So Rambo for sure. That was Stallone's biggie. Staying in the world of Stallone. The two over the top Rocky
Stop
movies.
or my mom will shoot.
Yeah, true. The two over the top Rocky movies are in the 80s, and that could, like the first two Rocky movies are sort of serious dramas,
Yeah.
and that was like 76
I was
and
going to say they were in the
79,
70s, weren't they?
and they feel like 70s movies. They're a little longer. They're very dramatic oriented. The acting's great. Rocky's my favorite movie all time. Along comes the 1980s, and suddenly the Rocky movies become cartoony and over the top, and he's fighting Mr. T in the third one from an A-Team, and then in the fourth one he ends the Cold War fighting Ivan Drago. I mean, those are just, but these movies
Wait,
are
so he Sylvester Stallone got retribution for Vietnam,
Mhm.
ended the Cold War.
correct,
I assume it's
and
ending
made
the
Stop
Iraq
or My
War.
Mom Will Shoot
Yeah.
in the same
all
decade.
in one decade.
Yeah, so he had a good decade. Stallone had a good decade. So the two Rocky movies that were over the top. Then there's a bunch of smaller ones, but Rambo and Rocky are his two daddies, and that Rambo franchise, 3 of the 4 were in the 80s. The Rocky franchise, 2 of the 6, soon to be 7, were in the 80s. Those are the two kings. Now let's get to Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a very good decade himself. You mentioned Conan the Barbarian.
Well, no, but close.
Conan the Librarian.
Which ties in, oddly enough, which we'll get to, both of our favorite 80s movies, which involves Stallone and Schwarzenegger, but we'll get there in a minute.
Yes. So sticking with Schwarzenegger and his amazing decade, Predator.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't even think of Predator.
The first Terminator,
obviously.
And Commando. Commando is one hell of an 80s movie because he's got to rescue his daughter, Alyssa Milano, from the bad guys. And he goes on a shooting spree everywhere. I mean, it's just a classic. Some of the great cheesy lines of all time are in that, where he's holding the guy over the Mulholland Falls by his leg. And he's like, Sully, remember when I told you I'd kill you last because you made me laugh? And Sully's like, yeah, you did, Commando. And he's like, I lied. And he dropped. I mean, it's just such good 80s cheese. So good. And then Terminator, of course, the first Terminator. Because Terminator 2 is a quintessential 90s film.
I think it was 90 or 91.
Because digital. That's where you saw a lot of digital effects, where the first Terminator, when things blow up, they were actually blowing shit up.
Yeah, they were actual special effects as opposed to visual effects.
Yeah, exactly. By the time T2 rolls around, hey, we're dealing with guys turning into metal. I mean, that wasn't...
Robert Patrick didn't actually turn into metal?
Well, his acting was pretty wooden, but I don't know if it was metal. So those are the two big daddies. Sticking with action, so we can cross that off the list. To a lesser level, you had Chuck Norris. And his movies are a little cheesier, a little cheaper. You had Jean-Claude Van Damme shows up in the 80s, a little cheesier.
This is again the crossover from the Kung Fu movie, the Taekwondo movie, martial arts movie into action.
Steven Seagal, action.
Can we forget about him?
Liked our single action stars. Wesley freaking Snipes was an action star to a certain degree. And then one of the best movies of the 80s, in my opinion, pound for pound, and an action film, Die Hard.
Well, when you said action, that's the first one I thought of.
Really?
So, okay. Yeah, that's where my brain went.
Could be, arguably in terms of action hero, tough guy movie. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
It holds up.
Fantastic film.
I mean, so many catchphrases from that. And then it turned Bruce Willis into an action star when he was the guy from Moonlighting.
Exactly. He was a soap star.
Yep, absolutely. So that's a classic. Some other good 80s action movies. Chuck Norris's baby, as far as I'm concerned, is the Delta Force, which still really holds up. You ever seen Delta Force?
I never have.
Okay. Again, I don't want to get into plots and whatnot, but there's a terrorist kidnap a flight out of Israel, for lack of a better word, right?
That doesn't
there's
happen.
Actually, right? There's action. This is in the 80s when that kind of shit went down, And there's a this is going to be really crazy, but there's a moving, you being Jewish, of the Jewish faith, they collect all the Jewish people on the plane. And it's kind of this 80s B movie, but the guys that put it on,
and the Jews were all in the Israeli Defense Forces and fucked everybody up.
Yeah, basically, they were from Israel. These two guys that owned, I think it was Orion or whatever it was. So they wrote in this kind of thing, and there's a really good scene where, and this is gonna get even crazier. One of the funniest movies. God, I forget the guy's name. It's gonna kill me. But who is Frank Drebin's sidekick in the Naked Gun movies?
Oh God,
in real life, George Kennedy.
Yeah, he was in the Stephen Queen movie. He was in
He's in
Robert Redford. Sorry,
yes, he was in tons of stuff, But George Kennedy is a priest on the plane, and yes, Cool Hand Luke, good job. And then they're taking all the Jewish people to the front of the plane. Keep in mind, folks, we're still talking about a cheesy 80s Chuck Norris movie, but there's 15 minutes of amazing acting in it, right? They paid George Kennedy to be in it, and because he won for Cool Hand Luke, he won an Oscar. So
he was fantastic in Cool Hand Luke.
So he is a priest, and they're taking all the Jewish people to the front, all the terrorists, And then he comes up and "Why are you coming up here, Father?" And he was like, "These are my brothers. Jesus was a Jew. I go where they go." And then literally, it sounds terrible, but you watch the movie, you get goosebumps. It's this great piece of acting. It's if you pull that out of a movie, you'd be like, "What is this, Schindler's List 2?" And 30 seconds later, Norris is like, "I'll get those bastards." And it goes right back to an action movie. But Delta Force, classic. So I think that's a lot of the key 80s action.
Unless you're going to leave out They Live.
Oh, yeah. Great. Sci-fi, though. Sci-fi?
Roddy Piper. There's some. Okay, yes. It broadly falls under the sci-fi category. Absolutely.
But one of the great action lines, "I've come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum."
The best action line.
Arguably ever.
All out of gum.
Now, comedies. Let's move into comedies, because what a ripe time for comedies.
3 Minute Baby?
Throw a couple out there, Dan. Any 80s comedies that really stand out to you that almost kind of, fit in with a decade beyond just being funny?
I don't know. Ghostbusters?
Absolutely.
It's one
And
of my-
I think you could make an argument that that's one of the best films from the 1980s.
Absolutely.
Period.
I watched it on the plane ride back from Spain. And
Did
it
you
was
really?
Still fucking amazing. I was like, yes, Ghostbusters was on the plane, and it was great. I
It
still
holds up
enjoyed it.
so good.
Really, really does.
So good. Yeah, it's classic. I mean, one of the best ones. I'll give you one, and it's very early, but man, is it a masterpiece. Blues Brothers.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Blues Brothers.
classic.
One of the worst sequels of all time. But the first Blues Brothers is amazing. You got Belushi and Aykroyd in their prime.
Yes.
You know, plus great music too. Here's one for you. I think one of the funniest films ever made, Caddyshack.
Caddyshack was that in the 80s? Really?
Yeah, early, like 80, 81.
Okay. So
yeah.
that feels 70s to me, but it could have been.
It
early
has
80s.
its 70s feel, but a
Yeah.
lot of the 80, 81 movies still have a touch of that 70s
Those lines
feel.
blur. Well, again, Bill Murray. We're talking a lot of the same people.
Oh.
Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd.
Aykroyd wasn't in the first one.
Not in Caddyshack, but he was
in
in
Caddyshack
Blues
too.
Brothers.
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. So he was in Blues
You
Brothers,
threw in Harold Ramis.
Ghostbusters, and Caddyshack 2.
He was
But
in
Bill
Caddyshack, too.
Murray was in Caddyshack and
And
Ghostbusters,
Ghostbusters.
but not Blues Brothers.
Correct.
Okay. Here is another one for you. Series of films. Chevy Chase in his prime.
Fletch.
National Lampoon's Vacation. The first Vacation,
So funny.
European, and Christmas are all perfect. Perfect movies.
You know, I really only know the first one. I don't know European Vacation well, and I don't know Christmas Vacation well.
Christmas Vacation is on every 5 seconds.
But I don't have cable, man.
Huh. Interesting. That's one that like more people know Christmas than the first two, but they're amazing.
I just know like nothing but Trouble, which is not that great.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna give those. Here's I think one of the funniest comedies ever made. Ready?
Okay.
Dan Aykroyd again. God, he was on fire, huh?
He was huge in the 80s.
Trading Places. Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy.
Okay, I was thinking.
You're drawing a blank. Don't tell me you've never seen Trading Places.
I'm not sure I have.
Where they with the stock market.
But you said that, and
With-
I immediately
with
thought of the
Mortimer?
Parent Trap.
Mortimer. They make
don't
the
know.
bet over the dollar.
I don't know if I've seen it.
Oh,
I've seen the artwork on the VHS tape 1,000 times.
Jeff in the distance. Have you ever seen Trading Places?
yeah.
Oh, I mean,
With the gorilla
Oh,
in the suit.
it's the best.
I'm not gonna buy the bacon at that price because my wife won't make love to me.
It's so good, Dan. You're missing like.
All right.
And when I'm not kidding when I say I think it's one of the funniest movies ever made. Not like, oh, it's a funny movie, like top 20 funniest films ever made. I mean, Murphy in his prime, dude. I mean,
You
and
can
it's a
never
classic
go
80s
wrong.
movies about the stock market and these two old men who, I mean, classic. If listeners, if you haven't seen Trading Places for whatever reason,
Okay.
do it. Just a classic. A couple more comedies for you. I'm kind of running low on the comedies. We did, oh my God, Spinal Tap. The greatest mockumentary ever made and one of the funniest films ever made.
And one of the first.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least the first from Christopher Guest, I think. Could
Yeah.
be wrong on that.
No, yeah, that's their first. That's their first for
Rob
sure.
Reiner wasn't,
Yeah, I mean,
uber fat yet.
classic. Absolutely.
I mean, it's so funny. It really set the stage for that genre. I mean, nobody else really made that many mockumentaries. You
No.
know, there was Chris Rock did Cell Block 4. That's kind of it. So
oh, I mean, anybody that Fear of Black Hat, yeah. If you've never
either.
for some reason, if you're listening to this and you've never seen Spinal Tap,
Do yourself a favor.
stop listening to this and go
It's-
see it.
Oh my God.
It's perfection, but I can't imagine anybody that even knows us remotely has never seen Spinal Tap. So it's called This Is Spinal Tap. Just go watch it if you haven't. Here's one that I know is cut from the same comedic cloth that you and I love. The first Naked Gun film.
Oh, I will even go on a limb and say the second one.
Yeah, second one's solid
Second
too.
one is fantastic. But-
Second one may cross into 90-91.
okay, fair. I'm just saying I liked it.
But that first one's a
It's-
masterpiece.
I watched that more times than I can tell you.
I think it could be one of the top 20 funniest ever. I would not argue somebody that had that on their list.
No,
I mean,
no.
that
God,
thing is chock full of gags. I mean, if you like your slapstick, there's nothing better, you know? These are our hill. These are our beans.
Yeah.
So
Very,
good.
very funny.
I will give you one or two more in the comedy world.
Oh, okay. What do you got?
Coming to America.
That was on my list as well.
Oh,
It's unstoppable.
it holds up so well. So well, that movie holds up
It's so
well.
funny.
It's tremendous. There are so many great little cameos in that people aren't
Well,
even aware of.
It's amazing to see where those people went.
Yeah, Louis Anderson.
Yeah,
is the guy flipping fries. Wow, where do I start? Because there's so many of them in there. A lot of people don't know Cuba Gooding Jr.
Who was he in that?
Ready for this? He is an extra in it without a line in the barbershop scene, which is one of the greatest scenes ever. There's 2 or 3 barbershop scenes. He's the guy getting his hair cut, where the old man's cutting him and not even hitting his hair, just cutting the air. He's in there just smiling, watching them do that bit.
Shit.
That's him. He looks like a teenager, but so good. That scene where they're talking about boxing in that coffee, in that barbershop, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's so amazing. So when he does that, how come every time I start talking boxing, some white boy's got to bring up Rocky Marciano? Rocky Marciano's good. And he's like, oh, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
Rocky Marciano's good, but compared to Joe Louis, he ain't shit. And then the one guy's like, he whipped Joe Louis's ass. And then Arsenio Hall's the other barbershop guy. That's right. The boy did whip Joe Louis's ass. I mean, that scene is magical.
Here's how magical that scene is. Ice Cube made what? 3 movies on that scene based on that scene.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. It's so true. And give you one or two more comedies real quick, and then we'll move on to another genre.
Oh no, I got a couple. If you're not gonna name them.
No, please go.
I was gonna say this best one for last, but I don't know. Fucking UHF.
Oh yeah. Weird Al Yankovic
brings
UHF.
Together Stallone. Brings together like every movie from the 80s. Including Conan the Librarian.
It's the ultimate send-up of the 1980s.
Absolutely.
That film, if you want to make fun of the 1980s, everything, even down to the Beverly Hillbillies, Dire Straits music video. I mean, literally, if you would probably learn more about the 1980s watching UHF than anything else.
I would never. I'll tell you, I would never have ever gone into a Specialist City had I not seen that movie.
Specialist City, so good, man. You got some more comedies?
Give me a sec.
I got one for you.
Okay.
It's more of a serious comedy, like more of an adult comedy. Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman.
Tootsie's fantastic.
That's a great
so
movie.
Good.
Very funny. And Bill Murray is actually really funny in that as well. There's some running themes. There were a couple guys that were just magic during that period. You know, Tootsie's great. Dustin Hoffman's very funny in that. It's a ridiculous story. It's, it's a little, it's not, I think as slapsticky as our kind of comedy, but so good. I'm going to put this down as a comedy, although I think it's one of the best films made in the 80s. Okay. And I also think it's more of a drama to a certain extent. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I mean, I only saw it once, and I was fairly young.
You've only seen it once?
I don't think I could appreciate the comedy at the time.
Okay. Wow. I thought that was like one of your flicks for some reason.
No, you're thinking of Owen probably.
Yeah. Oh, what a good movie, man. And a heart-wrenching film too. And a weird, I mean, just that ending is a tearjerker, but Steve Martin and John Candy. I mean, so good.
Oh my God. You just brought up Steve Martin. We haven't touched on a single one of his movies yet.
Yeah.
Not a single Steve Martin movie.
Does he have any 80s classics? I will give you one.
Okay.
Unheralded at its time. The Three Amigos.
It's probably one of the best comedies ever made ever.
Top 20?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
Would you fight top 10 for that?
Yeah, I think I would.
It was I think I would. It was a bit of a flop at the time, but history holds it in such high regard.
That's one of those movies that I had, probably on some HBO preview where I was able to pop the VHS in and record the movie, and I watched it non-stop. I love that movie so much. And little did I know, again, we were talking about people that went on from that movie. Phil Hartman, John Lovitz, obviously the Three Amigos, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase.
Yeah, and
Martin Short.
Listener, if you ever get to hang out with Dan, he does a lot of good Dan's not a huge impression guy, but he does some Three Amigos.
Look up here.
You're German doing like Little Nederlander goes. I mean, you got some good it's weird because I don't look at you as a guy that watches a movie 100 times, but if you talk to Dan about Three Amigos, you get the feeling that he's seen it more than once.
You shot the Invisible Swordsman. It said shoot up. We shot up.
Yeah, it's so good, dude. It's so
it's
good.
amazing.
Lip balm, everybody?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, and Steve Martin wrote that. I mean, it's like, Steve Martin is a goddamn.
You know who the third writer is on that? It's going to blow your mind. Randy Newman.
That doesn't surprise me at all. He did all the freaking music.
Yeah, he actually has a writing credit on it. And he said he's like, honestly, amazing. I just kind of sat around and typed. But like he was like the typist, but they gave him a writing credit.
I mean, who else could get My Little Buttercup right into the movie?
Yeah, God, would I love to ever just sit around and just watch Three Amigos. Oh, so good.
Such a good film.
Cool. I'm gonna go one last comedy, and we can move elsewhere. And speaking of Bowling for Soup, drummer Bowling for Soup, Gary, told me once that his litmus test for a woman is after a date or two to sit her down to watch this film. And if she does not get it or she does not find it funny, he knows she's not worth dating again. I think it's genius. It's a great theory.
Okay.
And it works. The film is Raising Arizona.
Okay, I have a
caveat. You gonna break my heart here?
No, I have a caveat to this.
Okay.
I think that's genius. It's Coen Brothers. Here's
first big Coen Brothers.
First one.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I had never seen a Coen Brothers movie before.
Okay.
I ended up watching Raising Arizona while I was at a resort in Mexico, not knowing anything about it. And like, I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, I just didn't
You must have been young, though.
I was young. I was probably 16.
I think you got to be like in your 20s.
So I really, really, really need to not do this as a disservice and go back and watch it again.
You've only seen it once?
I fucking turned me off, man.
Oh my God.
And I love the Coen Brothers.
Oh, that's one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, that is a masterpiece.
And everybody says that, and it always like falls on deaf ears with me, just because it made. I was like, what?
Well, I appreciate your honesty here on the podcast tonight. You know, that's actually brave of you. That's brave of you. But you gotta see that.
I'm not saying I don't like it.
Okay.
I'm just saying it didn't do anything for me at the time, and I need to rewatch it.
I'm telling you, you're gonna find stuff in that on this round as an adult that you're just gonna love.
I don't doubt it. Like,
soundtrack's brilliant. Everything's about Nicolas Cage is good in it, if you can believe that. So good. So I'm
kind of like one good movie.
Those are the comedies that I wanted to throw out there.
Okay.
Last but not, I will give you one more.
Okay.
I think it's one of the most underrated films of all time, even though it is successful and has spawned sequels. I think it's one of the best movies of the 80s. Revenge of the Nerds.
God, yeah.
That movie is a fucking masterpiece, dude. It came on the other night, and I actually like it was on HBO. I'm like, I'm gonna DVR this. I watched 15 minutes of it, and literally in 15 minutes laughed out loud 4 or 5 times.
And who do you think, J-Man? Who do you think is running all the IT corners of the world?
Well, people that wrote Revenge of the Nerds.
Yes.
I mean, some of the acting in there, even Anthony Edwards, John Goodman, before anybody knew who he was. Robert Carradine is such a good and underrated actor. The nerd that he plays, the main nerd in that, is so good. There's a scene that I caught that made me laugh out loud was the Japanese guy. They're watching the illegal footage of the naked sorority girls.
Exactly where you're going.
They've been watching it all night, all morning. They're sitting there in the morning, drinking beer, eating a cereal, and the Japanese guy goes, he's like, Lewis, I don't know how you can still keep looking at Betty's bush, you know, like in an exaggerated Japanese accent. And Robert Carradine, without acknowledging or looking at him, staring with the biggest smile ever, is like, I just don't understand you, Tashi. I mean, it's just so perfect. He's like, I could look at that forever. But the look on his face is just brilliant, man.
What
so
a great
good.
early celebration of geek culture.
Yeah,
like that movie was.
It was ahead of its time in that way, because nerd was a very offensive kind of thing. Like, you did not want to be called a nerd.
I mean, that was coming off of the vibe from the 50s that carried on his whole life.
Pre internet, obviously by a decade, if not more.
I mean, not according to Al Gore. But.
Well, okay, but
no,
they're not on the internet.
No.
They're nerds for other reasons, because the one guy plays the violin and the other guy, I think one kid has a computer and it's like a weird green screen, like,
Oh yeah, that's what I played Lemonade Stand on.
Yeah, so crazy. Okay, I am going to throw some just, I don't want to say. The teen genre was big. Teen movies took off in the 80s. Maybe were invented in the 80s. Well, I'll fire through them really fast. 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink.
You could just say John Hughes.
Yeah, exactly. Valley Girl with my friend Deborah Foreman. Breakfast Club. And the two best, in my opinion, Fast Times at Ridgemore High, which is kind of a quintessential early 80s movie. And then, of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, God.
One of the best movies made in the 80s period.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Classics. Any teen movies you want to throw out there, Dan, that I missed? Because there were tons of them.
I mean, you covered all the big ones. It's not really a teen movie, it's a tween movie, but Goonies obviously was a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah. To me, that's one of the best movies of the 80s.
We're totally
getting down to
because we were young in the 80s. Like, we didn't probably appreciate the Breakfast Club for what it was at the time, because we were not in high school getting in trouble.
Totally. Yeah, the teen comedies were huge. Can't Buy Me Love, I think, is a really underrated teen comedy. Oh, Say Anything. Man, that's
I don't want to buy anything that's bought or sold or sell anything. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not doing the speech justice at
Yeah.
all, but John
And that's
Cusack is fantastic.
maybe one of the better movies of the 80s period.
I agree.
Like, I think you could put that in the top 20 80s movies ever. It's the peak of that genre because it's a little
Sure.
more mature. And now I'm going to move into just the best. You got any other? You got any genres that you want to throw out there? Because sci-fi is simply covered by the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, it's kind of blanketed.
That's boom. There you go. Also, I mean, there was a lot of sci-fi then, but that was it. I think, one of the best films of
The Last Starfighter?
yeah, that's one of my favorites on the smaller level,
Yeah.
the cheap level.
Definitely.
There's some ones that I just personally love. I think Superman 2 is
Kneel before Zod.
some of the best bad guys ever.
It gave you Zod.
Yeah, and that was sort of like Superman's were the first real superhero movies that you would believe. The first one was like 77, 78, but that one was, I think, 1980, and it's so good. I mean, those Superman movies led the way for what we have now in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, and Jeff is throwing up a note here, and I've brought this up before in another podcast, but I think Tron, not sci-fi. I think, and Kai didn't seem to think that it held up, and maybe it doesn't. I haven't watched it since the 80s. But Tron was one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Yeah, see, I wasn't a Tron kid, but I knew kids that were.
It's obvious.
For whatever
Obvious.
reason. So, I also can't operate Windows, So sci-fi was great. There was a lot of great sci-fis. You can throw out some random ones that just stuff that I love in the 80s. I don't even know where it fits, but
Big Trouble in Little China?
there you go. Took it right out of my mouth.
Oh, really?
Took it right out of my mouth.
Goddamn.
Big Trouble in Little China. Fucking masterpiece.
It's
Kung fu,
fantastic.
action, fantasy, sci-fi.
Oh, it's all of it.
And it's a movie that could only be made in the 80s in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A real hokey one, but one that I just grew up on was The Beastmaster. The
Oh,
first
yeah.
Beastmaster.
Oh, no, that's a classic. That's a
Yeah.
classic.
Oh, so good. With Mark Singer. I mean, so good. Monster
I
Squad.
have Dead Milkman to thank for that one.
Yeah,
Not
shit.
Monster Squad.
Yeah.
Beastmaster.
Monster Squad is a classic, I think. It's just a great kids movie. Kind of like a poor man's Goonies.
Here's one you're missing. Going back to teen movies, The fucking Princess Bride.
Oh, we'll see. I was saving her.
Oh,
I was going to move into what I think were pound for pound the best movies, genres aside, of the 1980s. And I was going to say,
I didn't see that in the document, so I
Okay,
didn't.
fair
I
enough.
didn't mean to step on your toes.
no problem. Princess Bride. I think it's one of the best movies ever made. I think it's our generation's Wizard of Oz. In terms of its
Okay.
impact
No,
and its history
I'll
and
give you
its
that.
fantasy and
I'll
its
give you that.
hopefulness. That's, I think, one of the best movies ever made. I think it's one of the classics of the 1980s. It's a kid's film. It's an action film. It's an adventure film. It's just perfect. I think it's a perfect movie.
And I know you know this, and here's the rub that I didn't realize until about 10 years ago. The book is fucking amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The book is incredible.
The book is one of my favorite books of all time. Literally. Desert Island, I get 10 books to bring. That book comes.
Absolutely.
It's a masterpiece.
I totally agree with you.
And anybody, if everyone's seen the movie, I'd be
Yes.
if you haven't seen the movie, you're fucked up. But I will forgive you if you haven't read the book. However,
If only for the shots of RBI baseball, you
Yeah.
should watch this movie.
yeah, it's funny. Read the book. Read the book. Even if you're not a reader, read
It'll take you 2
this
hours,
book.
It's
a
short,
masterpiece.
and it's a quick read,
The-
and it's awesome.
the backstories on the character, how the writer William Goldman delivers it. It's just a
It's
masterpiece.
brilliant.
I think that's one of the best films of the 80s. Here's one, definitely falls in the action adventure world, but I think it's one of the best films of the 80s and kind of summarizes the genre in many ways. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question.
Masterpiece.
No question.
Masterpiece.
Mhm.
Absolute masterpiece.
It's got everything you want.
Moving into drama a little bit. We haven't gone there. And again, I think drama wasn't as good as it was in the 70s or maybe even the 90s, pound for
I
pound.
don't think 80s was really a good drama
No.
decade.
But Dead Poet Society.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal movie.
Yeah, that movie's something special.
Is that in the 80s,
It's
really?
in the 80s, and a companion piece, maybe not as good, but I think still really, really powerful, is Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, fantastic movie.
Yeah, I mean, Robin Williams was just knocking him out of the park in
Yeah.
the 80s. Here's one, timeless classic, basically influenced by one of my favorite authors, Gene Shepard, A Christmas Story.
That is a quintessential classic.
Yeah, classic. I think it's hilarious. I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the best kids movies ever made, and it's so reflective as an adult watching it. And that was made in the 80s. And a bomb when it came out, a stone cold bomb.
Here's a funny thing about that movie. I saw as you mentioned, I grew up
If you tell me
Jewish.
you see this in the theater, I'm gonna freak out.
No,
'cause
no,
I
no,
don't know any because it barely went to the theater.
I never saw it in the theater.
9 out of 10 people that say they saw it in the theater are bald-faced liars. Yeah.
They saw the leg lamp at Salters is what they saw. I saw that movie in the 4th grade, which is probably close to the theater, because my 4th grade teacher showed it to us in class
Mhm.
around Christmas time, and I was like, "What the fuck am I watching?"
Uh-huh.
Not
Well,
being
it's kind of racy for a 4th grade film.
well, and just like I didn't know, like you're in 4th grade, you're 10, you don't know what's really what is and what isn't, what's up, what's down. You know, growing up Jewish, I didn't really know what Christmas was like all about. And I'm like, what is it? And it was funny. It was super funny. I was like, this movie is hilarious, and I can't relate to any of it. None of it.
What a strange thing, because that's
I mean, it takes place not in California, obviously, probably on the East Coast. I think.
Indiana. Home in
okay,
Indiana. It was
Midwest.
filmed in Ohio, but it's like a Midwest.
I didn't
movie,
know what
you
snow was at that point. Like I had read about it.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah.
That is a real strange thing to even think of the concept of like some traditional Christmas holidays that some people just accept for
Yeah.
granted.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas literally meant nothing to me. It couldn't have meant less.
Yeah, that's when you were going through your white power phase and it had a completely different meaning.
White powder.
That too. Well, you had your white power phase, but then it moved into your white powder phase, you know.
It's amazing how incompatible those were.
Yeah, that's stuff. Unbelievable. Yeah, you think they would work together.
Yeah, you would think.
but they don't.
don't.
You know?
Nobody likes to snowboard, right? That's that's the takeaway.
We I think have knocked it out of the park. I
We
mean,
missed a shitload of movies.
yes, we missed a shitload, but if you watch half of, I'll be willing to say right now, I'll go on record, we have not mentioned one film that I don't recommend our listeners watching. If we set a film and you've never heard of it or never saw it on this podcast, you need to go watch it. We didn't say anything bad. You didn't say one thing where I'm like, oh no, I don't get it. Like everything was gold. I mean, then you get some of the weird ones that are a little more like personal, probably The Last Starfighter, stuff like that. It's not a classic, but it's a good piece of B movie sci-fi.
Sure.
For me, I'm trying to think. Harry and the Hendersons, that has an
It's a
emotional
classic.
spot for me.
Well, and then but
Great
that's
kids film.
another heartwarming film, which you still haven't let go of.
Yeah.
Because you still think Bigfoot exists.
That's well, you know, Alaska maybe. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Russia,
The undiscovered country.
it's Putin. Bigfoot is Putin.
Yeah. Bigfoot is Putin.
You've seen
It's
him riding a bear, man. Come
Bigfoot
on.
and Putin is two totally.
You ever
can
seen
make
them in the
t-shirt.
same room?
The front of the t-shirt is Putin, and it's his face, but it's a Bigfoot.
But it's the blurred out
on
like picture that you see.
But on the back of it, it's a Bigfoot ripping a fart with a little wind coming out. So it goes both ways.
Double
Bigfoot is
entendre.
Putin. Yeah. Any others, Dan? Did I miss anything that's really important to the 1980s? We kind of passed over some of the dramas, I think.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
70s.
Really?
Yep.
Damn.
Jaws 70s. First Star Wars 70s.
Yeah,
First
one of those-
Superman
yeah,
70s.
obviously.
You know, we're thinking.
No, I mean, we missed a shitload.
a lot of people stand by the Beverly Hills Cops films. I don't think they're as funny as people say, but that's kind of like the peak of Eddie Murphy as a superstar.
The first one was great, and we got Axel F, the song out of it.
A lot of people love
Police
the
Academy?
Lethal Weapon films. Well, the first two Police Academies I think are
I
hilarious.
can't, I was tempted to say not that long ago, but it was actually a long time ago. We tried to watch Police Academy in the van when we were on tour, and it was just unwatchable. Unwatchable.
That's because Bobcat
The second
Goldthwait
one-
wasn't in the first one, but he's in the second one.
Correlation, not causation, but I'll give it to you.
Mhm.
Steve Gutenberg was in all 5, and the first one sucked anyway.
Gutenberg. That's crazy.
Uh,
Cocoon? Cocoon's a pretty good
drama,
movie,
great
man.
movie.
Yeah.
Battery's Not Included.
I think that's 80s.
Yeah.
That's a real lost one.
No, that's
like,
80s. That's
That's
definitely
in
80s.
that like
I
monster.
saw that one in the theater.
Me too.
Fantastic movie.
That's one of those ones that falls in that sort of forgotten Monster Squad, sort of Last Starfighter territory. Like it deserves more, if you will. you
Yeah.
know?
That was a fabulous. Well, I've just been presented a list.
Oh no, it's gonna throw everything off. I was gonna ask Jeff if
I
he
don't-
had anything you wanted to throw in there because he's got that couple years on us, so he got to experience a little more 80s.
Well, I mean, I've got to say, Jeff, this list does have the Jewel of the Nile on it. So
Classic 80s film.
Dude, that is a pretty quintessential 80s movie.
it doesn't mean it's good.
You know what was it? What came first? Was it Romancing?
Slides down
Romancing the
hill.
Stone.
Romancing
yeah.
the Stone was first, and then
Yeah,
Jewel of the
Kurt
Nile.
Russell.
I saw one of those in the theater.
Michael Douglas. Sorry,
Wall Street.
the original Wall Street. That
Was
was
that in the 80s?
that was a drama.
Wow, and that was about the decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a solid one for sure. Anything else on there?
No, but Sorry, he didn't give me a list of 80s movies. He gave me a Michael Douglas IMDb page, which I guess is appropriate.
We'll be sure to have Jeff on when we apparently we'll have Jeff on when we have the Michael Douglas podcast episodes. But what a great decade for film.
Fatal Attraction was good.
I know that was huge. I don't like that movie. It's just uncomfortable, but it's great. Obviously, I mean,
Basic Instinct.
was that 80s?
Probably not.
Yeah, that seems like an early.
Why do you know that?
movie.
Oh, because you're looking at Michael Douglas's IMDb page. That's why you know that.
Apparently, Dan's brother has an encyclopedic knowledge of every Michael Douglas film.
What's weird is that's his homepage. Every time you launch a browser, that's what shows up.
What the fuck? You know,
I can help you with that in Dan's IT corner.
next week.
Oh my God.
Wow.
How did we fuck that up?
Wow. Yeah. Now, I'd be willing to say that's one of the best movies made in the 80s, but it's
If
not one that I
only-
come back to watch.
If only because it actually gave ground to Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, it's true.
That's
And
what
Reese's
kind of
Pieces are
launched
better
it.
than M&Ms.
You know, they're delicious.
Do you think Reese's Pieces are better than M&Ms?
Well, until M&Ms
'Cause
came out with peanut butter M&Ms,
That took you over.
it still does. I love them. They're
Yeah,
delicious.
you were out of control, though. You used to bag out on that. You get those fat bags and just chow those.
Man, nothing gets you through practice after a long day of work better than a
Yeah.
bag of peanut butter M&Ms and a beer.
True. E.T.'s, that's a
a
quintessential
classic.
80s movie. I feel like we're missing more Spielberg stuff.
Oh my God, Blade Runner. Patton Oswalt's gonna fucking murder us.
Now, see, that will be the first one I feel Blade Runner is overrated, and we've talked about it before on the podcast.
So
and
here's the
if
thing.
I have people look at me like you are fucking insane.
Here's the thing. I had only seen.
I saw it
probably
late
in the
game.
90s.
I was an adult when I saw it.
I
yeah.
saw it probably in the 90s. I think my dad had rented it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm watching. I was in and out. Like I didn't watch the whole thing. I just remember kind of seeing it and didn't know what I was watching. I watched it probably a year ago. It's fantastic.
Is it? I think
It's-
I didn't see it in the right light.
It's really like film noir. It's really dark.
Uh-huh.
There's good shit that happens in there,
Yeah,
and it raises a lot of questions.
Here's some super bizarre trivia for any hardcore.
Got another one for you as well.
Okay, Fresh Talk listeners. I saw Blade Runner. I was a little sick, or my girlfriend at the time was sick, and we were like spending the weekend together, and we're just gonna movie up because one of us wasn't feeling well. I'm not gonna say who this is. No. Check this out. That girl is in one. She was an actress. Ready for this? And she is in one of the movies that we mentioned.
She was the girl in Goonies.
Yeah, the girl in Goonies.
Ah,
So there's a little insane trivia for you. If you're a complete lunatic and you actually listen back to this podcast, it was briefly mentioned, but
really
one
not that
of the
hard.
great 80s movies, I dated a girl that was in one of those great 80s movies. I will give no more, but I saw it with her watching Blade Runner. So maybe I was a little under the weather and I just didn't get it, because I people whose taste I trust, like you and Kai, are like, yo, come on, it's a
I'm not like
masterpiece.
one of those over the moon dudes for it, but like it was good.
Mhm.
One other that we didn't mention.
Not as good as Blade.
Well, which one are we talking? Like Blade Trinity? We talking Blade 2 that has Norman Reedus in it, which would later go on to be in The Dark Saints, and then later on in The Walking Dead, or
even weirder, the bad guy in the first Blade, the young vampire guy, I had a burger with at In-N-Out last time I was in Vegas.
oh no, I
Literally
remember that story.
just hanging out In-N-Out. I'm like,
What
this guy
adults
looks
here?
familiar. Yeah, totally. It's the guy that does the blue
cigarette
commercials.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why does this guy look so
Blade 3? What? What are you saying, Jeff?
Three.
Jeff,
Okay, we got
oh.
3 more from the Peanut Gallery. What do you got?
Back to the Future.
Oh no! Whoa!
That was on my
wait,
short
wait,
list.
Wait. That was
Fuck.
on my list. But
That was
for-
on my list
But for the
too.
record, if you're watching this, no. Look, my computer is dead right now. It's fucking dead. That was my number 1. That is the best 80s movie.
No, me too.
Hands. No. I think so. I really think so. Like, it is the best movie because it gives you it's family, it's adventure, it's sci-fi, it's every single genre.
It's Crispin Glover, and there's no one crazier on planet
Yeah,
Earth.
It's Michael J. Fox,
Yeah.
80s movie star. It's
Yeah.
Huey Lewis as the soundtrack.
Oh man,
And it's amazing. That's a perfect movie. And I was going to say, you could make an argument that is the single pound for pound best movie.
quintessential 80s movie.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Fuck. Nice job. Jeff. I
Well,
can't
sorry,
believe it.
Graham, you don't get to bust our balls on this
Yeah,
one.
there
'cause we
goes-
missed it.
Damn, my computer. It was at the top. I was like, got to save it for last.
All right, Jeff. I agree with you. Fantastic film, but
I'm
very,
not
very
a huge
serious.
war movie fan, but yes, it's great. No doubt. That's a dark movie, too.
It is
Jesus.
dark.
Yeah.
Super dark. And then
Very good though.
Scarface.
No, we mentioned
We
Scarface.
talked about it.
Scarface.
I tend to think that's really overrated, Scarface.
Poltergeist.
Oh, it's a great,
well,
great horror
we
movie.
never even
Oh,
got
we
into
didn't even go to
horror.
horror movies.
Kai is gonna murder us all.
I don't think we can go in.
No. Here's what we have to do.
We'll bring Kai in for.
We have to bring,
Yeah, for sure, for
especially
sure.
because we're approaching Halloween,
Yes.
and because this is Kai's deal.
Yeah. And for hardcore listeners, if you go to the iTunes and go back to the very first ever Fresh Talk podcast,
2 or 3.
First 2, I think, was
Let me look this
horror
up.
movies, and we debuted coming up on 2 years. So
I
we'll
think it
bring
was-
Kai
I
back.
think it was 2 or 3.
And maybe we go
episodes.
right into it was very serious, honestly. If you care about horror movies, I mean this. If you're listening to this, if you like horror movies, go to the very first 2 Army of Freshmen Fresh Talk podcasts where it was just Kai. Dan joined in like week 3 or 4 or something like that.
right
And
after horror movies.
yeah, and I'm telling you, we tried to take it very seriously. So we like spent hours of research. So we were like, we're gonna have a very serious conversation. As soon as Dan came, it was all flushed down the toilet. But at any rate,
Jeff, you already said number 1. You don't get another number 1.
you got one more? Okay.
Little Mermaid, 1989.
Oh, we didn't talk cartoons.
We didn't touch Disney at all.
We didn't talk cartoons. Yeah. The 80s has one of my favorite animated films ever, which is Flight of the Dragons.
Oh God, it's a classic movie.
And
Wasn't the Hobbit cartoon from the 80s? Or was that
no,
70s?
I checked. It was 77. But the other one, and I feel like an idiot. My God, how could I forget the name? The Secret of Nim. I grew up.
God, yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on the Secret.
So
of
did
Nim.
we. Yeah,
That movie like
Jeff's
affected me. That was my movie too. When I was a little kid, there was like the VHS tape that like we talked about this,
I
but
always wanted a shiny of my very own.
yeah, that's genius.
Sorry, sparkly.
Yeah,
Sparkly.
sparkly. Like I had like 1 or 2 VHS tapes, and your parents would do the poor person speed, or at least my parents did, and they would cram as many movies
totally.
on it as possible. And this is like when VHS first gives like, oh, there's magic, like my dad's magic, And my tape that I would watch every day when I came home from school, or the 2 tapes, because I think it was a 2-parter, was in no specific order: the animated Hobbit,
Classic.
Beastmaster, Last Starfighter. These were all like on these 1 or 2 tapes that I remember.
Yeah.
And Secret of Nim, and I think what else was on there? The one, and this is gonna sound really crazy, but Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island, which is an animated film, and Flight of Dragons, and I just love those.
We didn't, and Jeff is pointing this out. We didn't bring up any of the Tim Burton Batmans from the 80s.
Not in.
We didn't-
I think they're overrated.
I think the first one is fantastic. We didn't bring up
Oh.
Howard the Duck, which
Oh,
a lot of
that's-
people are in or out.
I love Howard the Duck, but that falls into, I think, our Last Starfighter, not a classic.
We
but-
didn't bring up Clue, which I love.
Ooh, that's a wild
It's a
card.
solid one.
That's a wild card. It was just a fucking bitchin' decade. What can you say? It was just a great decade.
There was
for
a lot.
film.
There was a lot wrong with it, but there was a lot right with it.
Yeah, there really was. Well, that was a fun conversation talking about
Wow,
all those
we
great
should start a
movies.
show maybe on like some video channels.
So
Called
what?
I love the 80s.
So what movie, Dan? Out of our conversation, give me 3 movies that you need to now see or you want to see again.
Well, the first one is Raising Arizona.
Yeah, you got to
obviously.
see that.
I would say Ghostbusters, but I just watched it.
Okay.
I've seen The Breakfast Club too many times. Boy, I'm gonna go nostalgic for me and go Tron again.
Watch a good Tron session.
I-
I'm gonna do Blade Runner because that's the one I feel like you didn't understand Raising Arizona. I think I need to see Blade Runner again.
It's worthwhile.
But per our conversation, man, it makes me want to watch The Three Amigos. I mean,
Ah,
does
yeah,
it ever make
no.
me want? And Back to the Future. Back to the Future is one of those movies when someone says it, I want to immediately watch it. Like, you know what? Fuck my life. I just want to fucking watch Back to the Future right now.
Yeah, it was
you know?
kind of funny. I was having a conversation.
I'd like to live in Back to the Future. Like, if you could make,
Well,
I know there's a
Jesus.
lot of movies that like you'd like to live in, but that's up there.
Who wouldn't
for
want to
me.
have crazy Christopher Lloyd as a scientist friend that
Yeah.
makes a fucking time machine?
Marty McFly? His girlfriend's smoking
His
hot.
name is Mick Fly.
Yeah, he plays guitar.
He's Fly.
Jams with Chuck
He
Berry.
plays Huey Lewis in the news at the talent show.
Yeah,
Like,
the best. Maybe Liz the best. Yeah. I remember riding on cars on the skateboard. I was very young at the time when I saw that, but that was it. That to me was like the single coolest thing ever. And every kid on the block did the skateboard flip up trick.
yeah,
That's
of course.
like it
You
was.
see that and you're like, you can do that?
Yeah. And it was the one trick to this
Yeah.
day that I can probably achieve because all you have to do is push down on the board. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. In the
Well, that
world.
was getting back to the probably what we are calling the best 80s movie. That was so much fun to like watch with my parents, given that they grew up in the 50s and you go back to the 50s in the movie, and they reminisce about the shit. They're like, oh, remember those, and the scooters with the fruit crate on it, and they're writing like and just all this stuff, and it's like, you want a tab, you got to pay for it, like all these one-liners.
So perfect.
It's amazing. Would you fall off a boat like because of the vest?
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
1.21 gigawatts.
So the best line in the whole film. The best line, we talk about it. We say it all the time, but run, Marty! Why? Who is it? It's the Libyans! I mean, the Libyans. And then it cuts to dudes in a VW van with a rocket launcher screaming, looking for Doc Martin in the parking lot of a mall at a small town. It's so good.
I gave him a casing full of pinball machine parts. Like, classic.
It's so good, man. It's so good.
What a winner.
Yes, what a great decade for film. It's been a nice conversation tonight about all these wonderful movies. Go watch them. And please let us know.
What
let
did
us
we
know
miss?
what
It kicked your ass from the 80s that we didn't talk about?
I'm sure we missed something. I'm sure. Luckily, Jeff saved us with Back to the Future, because that we couldn't have lived with that one.
My God.
Yeah, that
we'd have to do another podcast on how much we suck for missing Back to the Future.
Yeah. So, folks, as always, you're listening to Fresh Talk. My name is Chris.
I'm Dan.
You can find me on Twitter, pretty much only on Twitter, at Army of Fresh Men. And you can find Dan where?
I'm at SpoonieDX pretty much everywhere.
And where can you find the Twitter in general?
The Twitter? You can find the Twitter at twitter.com.
Fresh Talk? Where can you get the updates to know when the new podcast is filming? Because right now, if you're like one of the lucky 2 or however many people are enjoying.
There's 4 people watching now, probably including me.
The lucky 4.
One of the lucky 3.
If you want to be able to watch it live when it happens, so you can actually get the visual instead of listening to it days later on your podcast. Where do they go, Dan?
Yeah,
we're gonna try and alert you a couple hours before we do it.
You follow us on Twitter at Fresh Talk Pod. You can follow us on Facebook.
That's Pete Pod, POD.
What else would it be?
I'm just throwing it out there.
POWD.
Pood.
Fresh Talk Pood.
The Poodcast.
Facebook.com.
Tonight on the Poodcast.
It's not Canadian, man. Facebook.com/Fresh Talk Podcast. We're on Google Plus. If you want to, when we're doing this live, if you follow us on Google Plus, which no one does because no one uses Google Plus, you can submit questions directly into the Facebook thing. And
can you do it when you watch on YouTube? Can we get questions from YouTube watchers, or can they only be visual?
They can comment on the Facebook. I'm sorry, Facebook on the YouTube. Yes, they can do that. Okay. Which Rory Sweetman did.
Really?
Yeah. Good.
What do you have to say?
He said we're live.
Oh, good. It's working. That's good.
He's watching.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rory.
I miss Rory. He's a heck of a guy.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
Yeah, I hope to see him at WrestleMania this year. He's a hardcore wrestling fan.
He loves wrestling.
Yeah. He does a trip every year to America to go. That's like his yearly trip. And I think that's cool as shit.
Not training in the mountains of Scotland to run like 50 miles or whatever.
Or showing up like dead hand. Remember that one time he was like, I just ran a marathon. And I'm like,
what are you doing here?
No, dude. You're drunk at a merch table. You didn't run. No, I'm serious, man. I just ran a fucking marathon. It was awesome. I'm like, no, dude, you're fucking shit faced, dude. Like, there's no way you ran a marathon.
Because he had one beer after the marathon. That's all it takes.
He goes for it, no doubt. Well, guys, thank you as always for listening. We appreciate it. We will be back next week with another intriguing episode. But meanwhile, top of the episode, send us some of your 80s movie picks that we miss. And we're going to throw them out at the top of next week's episode.
We'll cover them next week.
We'll make sure, because we know we missed 1 or 2 for sure.
1 or 2.
God, we almost missed Back to the Future.
It's fucked up, man. God, taking away our 80s card.
It's tough. It's tough. Oh, yes, the 80s. I was but a child.
As were we both.
Yes. All right. Well, in that case, Dan, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah, I would love to. Ladies and gentlemen, cue the Bossa Nova.